We're off to the forest to see Miss Jean. She lives in a house that is mostly green, except for the chimney and windows and walls, and one or two places just down the halls. And it's filled with rabbits and newts and snails, and fat little puppies that wag their tails, and a whale and a tiger and elephants too. Well, maybe not elephants.
Hi, come on in. You're just in time to help us find out about cocoons. Do you know what they are? How about you, Jeannine?
Well, something's in it.
Something's in it. That's a pretty good answer.
When it comes out, a different thing's in it. What comes out?
What comes out is different from what goes in. That's a pretty good way to look at it. How about you, Bryan? Do you have any ideas about cocoons?
Yeah, I've heard that that caterpillars spin in it. I didn't really know what they meant. Spinning in it.
They don't spin in it, they spin a cocoon.
Spin a cocoon.
Well, we're going to look at a few in a few minutes. A cocoon, one thing a cocoon does is to keep its owner warm, right? And I'm doing some knitting these days to make something warm, to keep people warm. It's going to be an Afghan. You know what an Afghan is? Some people say it's a dog. There is a kind of dog called an Afghan.
We have one at home.
But what I make...
Not a dog.
Not an Afghan. Oh, you have an Afghan. An Afghan is something else, too. It could be a person who lives in the country called Afghanistan.
Or it could be just a blanket.
Or it could be just a blanket. So this is obviously going to be a blanket, isn't it?
I don't think it was good.
But it's sort of a funny shape right at the moment, isn't it? What do you think? What kind of animal do you think would make a good blanket for? A snake. But I'm making a lot of these, and then I'm going to put them all together so it'll be a really big blanket when it gets finished. Well, I think it's about time to put my knitting away and go over to the discovery table and see what kind of different cocoons or things that might be mistaken for cocoons we have over there. How was the cocoa, kids?
Good.
Goodness, I forgot to offer you some cookies. Well, next time you come, you can catch up on the cookies, okay? You know how noisy the gerbils are today? Maybe we'll have time to play with them after a while. They get along pretty well by themselves, but to keep them tame, it's a good idea to take them out and play with them now and then. How are you, Aurora? Ready for a sunflower seed? Don't you want a sunflower seed? You want me to give it to you? Personally? How do you like that? Isn't he spoiled?
My hamster loved him. I mean, my hamster, he loved sunflower seeds. In fact, we've got a whole box of them at home.
Did something happen to your hamster?
Yeah, died. We had two of them. One of them was named Og, and then the other one was named Missy.
Well, that's the trouble with pets. They don't live forever.
And Og died because there's too much dampness. He could have lived for about another year. We got him when I was in first grade. We kept him 2 years. He could have stayed another year.
Well, that's pretty good for hamsters because lots of hamsters escape and run down a hole and you never see them again long before they're 2 years old.
And then Missy, she died because there was too much dampness.
Oh.
See, you shouldn't keep them in any place that's damp.
What, like a basement?
Yeah. Well, we've got a family room, which is warm, but shouldn't leave it by the fireplace.
Well, it's hard to find
air
just the right...
comes down there, unless you have your damper open. If it's closed, it doesn't matter.
Well, let's see what kinds of homes some of our insect friends have built for themselves. Finding proper homes for pets is one thing, and going out into nature and finding the different ways that insects make homes for themselves is another, but they're both very interesting subjects. Goodness, you getting a cold, Bryan?
Yeah, I think so.
Now, I said insect friends, but if your father or mother found this many of this kind of insect on a tree on your front lawn, do you think they'd be very friendly?
We have one like
Do
that.
you know what they are? What these little things hanging all over this branch are? They're,
Cocoons, I know.
well, they're sort of like cocoons, because what are cocoons made of?
Silk.
Silk, right. And it's hard to see the silk from here, but we'll take one off in a minute and discuss it. But
This one's the loosest, I think.
yeah, well, maybe we can get that one off. But if you just had one of these and you'd never seen one before and you were curious and you picked it and looked inside it, like Bryan says, he likes to find out about what's inside of things, then you would think it was very interesting. But if your mother or father is interested in keeping their trees healthy, they might immediately snatch all these bagworms off the tree, because next year there'd be even more bagworms if you left all of these. So one of anything can be interesting, but too many can be a nuisance. Let's take this biggest one off right here and see what we can...
You can see how they're hooked.
All right, you can take one off too and see if you can... Jeannine, would you like one? You're not too squeamish about insects?
No.
Now, what do you see about it right away? What's it
Yeah.
all covered with?
Those needles.
Covered with needles from the Douglas fir tree that it was growing on. When you try to take the needles off, is it easy or hard?
It's hard.
It's hard to get the thing apart because it's made out of very strong silk, like Bryan said.
I mean, Jeannine.
Didn't you say? Oh, well, you said it once too, didn't you? You knew
No.
that cocoons were made out of silk.
Well, I knew it. I couldn't get it in my
Oh.
head right away.
When you
At my
tear...
friend's house, they have these great big pine trees because, see, we walked up to the gas station to get his tire pumped, and we went past this great big pine tree. They had them like in a row, and we saw a lot of these bagworms.
A lot of the bagworms. Well,
It looks like fur inside.
well, you've gotten down to the silk now. I have stronger fingernails, so I got through my silk already, and there's nothing in this particular, nothing alive in this particular bag.
It's hard.
The bagworm uses this for its house as well as its cocoon, where it spends the winter to turn into a... What do you think a bagworm turns into? You have any idea? What kinds of things make cocoons usually?
Caterpillar.
Caterpillars. And then what do caterpillars usually turn into?
Butterflies.
Butterflies or
Moth.
moths. Well, the bagworm turns into a moth. When it's a caterpillar, it's called a bagworm. And when it comes out of its cocoon.
Dried up
Wonder
black
how moths
dirt
are
in here.
white because the silk's white.
Yeah, sometimes when you open up one of these bagworm
There's like
cocoons,
coffee in there. See? Coffee.
Right. those are just probably the remains or the skin of the caterpillar that used to be in there. Sometimes when you open up one of these, you'll find a lot of eggs that the mother bagworm moth left in there to hatch out next spring. And when the eggs hatch out, did you find something? You still haven't gotten into yours.
I have.
Your silk is very, very tough. But some of them have eggs in that will hatch out into caterpillars in the spring, and the caterpillars will crawl all over the tree and build themselves their own little bags out of silk.
This is a like round thing in here.
Let's see if yours has anything different.
It's hard. I've torn
Ooh,
some
that
of
one
these
is
apart
really
before.
tough.
And they except I've seen cocoons when they were just plain white, and then I tore it open. I see this black thing, and it was all dried up. I wondered what it was.
Well, sometimes something happens to the caterpillar inside the cocoon and it dies and never turns into anything. Well, this is a pretty big cocoon. Let's look at something very small. Some very small cocoons that are a very pretty color.
Spider web.
Yes, well, spiders make silk too, don't they? And even some spiders make sort of things like cocoons to spend the winter in. Now, you have to look very closely at this. And Bryan, have you got sharp eyes? Can you tell me if that's just one cocoon or if it's several? No, don't. Just look from where you are.
Looks like it's a lot.
It looks like it's a lot. Well, you have very sharp eyes. I'd say there were at least a dozen little teeny cocoons in there. What color are they?
Yellow.
Yellow. Did you ever see a yellow cocoon before?
No.
And these are so tiny that I don't think that they could be caterpillars. I think that there's some other insect.
Ants?
Well, that's
Baby ants?
Baby
because
ants.
I've seen them that small before.
Right, but where do you usually find ant cocoons? Or pupae?
In the ground.
Right.
I've seen them, and they're so small. They look like that, except they're white,
Right.
I think.
You find them down in the ground, and a better word for those would be pupae, you know, rather than cocoon, because they don't have any silk on them, do they?
No.
They don't have any silk. Ants don't put any silk on their cocoons, but I think these might be from a little wasp. But anyway, I found them behind a shutter, so I'm pretty sure they're not ants. But they might.
Do you think they'll crack open?
Well, it's even hard to see. They might already have cracked.
They look like claws, a little.
They look right.
Round balls of claws.
I think I might have to put them under my microscope to really see what's been going on there. You can almost see little holes in the end, and the insects might have already come out. But it's still a pretty little pile of cocoon to look at. That's at least sort of a mystery for the day. If you find out what they are, let me know. And if I find out, I'll let you know. But in the meantime, we can enjoy a little pile of yellow silk cocoons that are very tiny. Okay, let's take a look at something that's a little bigger and see what you'd think if you discovered that if you were digging around in the dirt. Would you call it a cocoon?
No,
Why not, Brian?
because it's too big for one.
Well, it isn't the size that's important. Some cocoons are twice as big as that.
It looks like a pupa.
I think you're right, right. but-
Because I've seen it in this book. I had this book called Ladybug. I made a book report on it in second grade.
Well, why wouldn't you call it a cocoon? What's the one thing that we just said that cocoons are made out of?
Silk.
Silk. Does that have any silk?
Don't know if I can.
No, it's
It's
just
like it's made out of rock.
right. It's very hard and tough, and don't squeeze it too hard; it might crack. This is
What do you
a.
think's in it?
Well, I don't think anything's in it anymore. This is an old pupa from a caterpillar called the hickory horned devil, and I was trying to take care of it so it would turn into the royal walnut moth, and I put it in a little cage and I buried it all one winter, and then when the sun started to get warm in the spring, I dug it up and waited for it to turn into a moth, but it didn't. It got too dried out or something. But anyway, it's nice to have a big pupa like this to talk about, even if it didn't turn into the moth.
I think I've seen that on one of your shows in 1969.
Well, we've talked about hickory horned devils quite a bit. Now, here's something that's a little lively.
I found one of them walking home from school.
Right, and there are a lot of interesting things. Oh, now, I wish you weren't quite so lively. That's right.
Touching them.
Here we have two of them, as a matter of fact.
Caterpillars.
All right, what do you call them? Caterpillars, right, but they have a special name. Don't you have a name for them, Brian?
No.
Woolly bears. You know it, don't you?
Woolly bears.
Woolly bears. Don't you think that's a good name? Don't they look like they feel like a teddy bear?
They have the color of a bear, too.
Yeah. I went out early this morning, even though it was sort of cool, and I went around turning over boards and picking up old pieces of trash on the ground, and I found these two. One was sleeping behind a shutter, and one was sleeping under an old board. And they didn't get quite around to making their cocoons for winter, so they just went to sleep as is while they were still caterpillars.
It's like there's a bee or something right there. A dead one.
Yeah,
Dead something.
What is that white thing?
well, let's take one thing at a time. Let's finish with the woolly bears, and then we'll look at the rest of the stuff. I just left that one there because he's holding on to the rest of the stuff. Do you know a superstition about woolly bear caterpillars?
What does superstition mean?
Well, it means something that people keep telling you, and you don't
Just
really
like if
know
you
what
go
it's
under a...
Right, like
a
walking under a
ladder.
ladder, you'll have bad luck, or if you see a black cat going across your path, you'll have bad luck, or if you break a mirror, you'll have bad luck for 7 years.
And my mother told me that every time you step on one, it would rain. And also, what was that? Sometimes they sting you.
Well,
Some caterpillars sting.
Some caterpillars can, so that's not a superstition, that's real, right, but not all caterpillars. But I never heard that one about stepping on one, making it rain.
That's only a joke.
But some people look at the woolly bear caterpillars every fall, and they say, well, the woolly bear caterpillar has more brown on it than black this year, so we're going to have an easy winter. But if they look at it and they say it has more black than brown, it's going to be a very hard winter. So what do you think you'd say if you believed that and you looked at these caterpillars?
It's going to be a nice winter.
It's going to be a nice winter because their brown stripe is fatter than both their black stripes put together, right? Well, these woolly bears didn't make their cocoons yet, so when do you suppose they will?
Maybe next fall.
Maybe next fall, maybe next spring, right after they've slept all winter. And when they make it, it'll look something like that. Just a little brown, silky cocoon.
I've seen those before.
Right. Well, that's, if you saw one of these before, it was made by a woolly bear. And then after a little while, out comes a pretty white moth with black spots called a Isia Isabella. Not a funny name. Oh, there goes our woolly bear for a walk.
It's a toddler.
He decided to wake up from his nap. Why don't you go over and see Bryan, woolly bear? See, every time you touch them, they roll up. If you get your hand away, Bryan, maybe he'll come over to see you. I don't think he's particularly
have
which
any
way. There.
eyes?
You're scaring him. Let him walk all the way over to you. Yes, they have eyes.
You do?
Around circles.
Certainly.
I see his head. He bumps.
No, he comes to something solid, then he thinks it might be something he could get under. I can train him with my toothpick. How about that? Let's turn him over and look at him underneath if he'll stand still long enough so you can see his eyes.
Let's look at this one. He's not too active.
Yeah. Come
They
here.
have lots of legs.
Yeah.
That's all I know. They have lots of
Well, they
legs.
have, if they're insects, how many real legs do they have?
8? No.
Spiders have
6?
8. 6, right. If they're really insects, they have 6 real legs, and that's what this one has. And if I just get him to hold his head out so we can see his eyes. His eyes are black and shiny, and they take up practically his whole head.
Wow, big eyes.
Big
Bigger
eyes.
than grasshoppers, I
And see,
think.
here he has 3 real, oh, the other one's going to wake up. Why don't you and Jeannine take that one over there and see if you can see his eyes and his real legs.
Come here.
He has 3 legs on each side, 3 real legs, and then underneath his abdomen, he has several pairs of legs that are called false legs because they're not really legs, they're just sort of little extra projections that help him hold on. Can you see those? See his little extra legs? But they don't really look like his other legs. His other legs are black and shiny and have claws. These are his false legs that he just has while he's a caterpillar. When he turns into a moth, how many legs will he have?
8, I think. No. 6?
6, right. No matter what stage he's in, he'll have 6 legs. If he's a caterpillar or a moth,
There we go.
he'll have 6
Hey,
legs.
neat. It has like suction cups.
Yeah, that's right. That's what those legs help him do,
There.
climb.
Oh, no.
So he has 6 real legs
They're sticky.
and 2 big shiny eyes.
See?
Well, let's put
Look at his eyes.
the woolly bears back in the jar, and I might put them in my terrarium to finish out the winter.
They
I might
should.
get some moths.
Look.
Yeah, some of their hair comes off a little bit. All right, now try your cocoon know-how on this. Do you think that is a cocoon?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, this is sort of tricky,
woolly
isn't it?
bear's, cocoon. Well, maybe a little different.
It's sort of tricky, isn't it? Because reach out one finger with your right hand, Bryan, and touch it and see if it feels like it's made of silk.
No.
No.
It feels like it's made of plaster.
It feels as hard as the hickory horn devil
Yeah.
pupa, doesn't it? Well, this does have a little bit of silk on it. Right there, you can see just a little thread that's holding him onto the stick.
If that breaks, he's had the force.
Right. He'd fall off onto the ground. I'm holding him bottom side up. If he were out in nature, he would be hanging the other way on the underside of the branch. And this is a chrysalis. It's
I've heard of that.
It's a butterfly.
We've had
It's going to be a
story.
butterfly.
It's called the beginning of the monarch, I think.
Right, the monarch makes a chrysalis, and out of the chrysalis comes a monarch butterfly. And this is a swallowtail, one of the swallowtails. It was a pretty green and black striped caterpillar, and then it made its chrysalis right here in HodgePodge Lodge, and maybe we'll get a pretty butterfly coming out of it.
Does he swallow from his tail?
No, it means he has long, thin projections on the back of his wings like an old-fashioned coat they used to wear to funerals and weddings and important places. So this isn't a cocoon either because it's hard, but it does have a little bit of silk to hold it on the branch. Well, what would you say about this one?
It's
I think
surely
that's a
made of
cocoon.
silk.
Right, you don't even need to feel that, but you may with one finger and be sure that it's made of silk.
Yep.
Right.
Silk it's made out of.
And this you would find hanging from a tree when you go for a walk in the winter.
Looks like solder right in there. Tell
This
you
is-
where your fingers are. It says silver.
So, and I never can remember which moth this is going to be. I keep looking it up and looking it up. It's either the Promethea or the Cecropia or the Polyphemus. I get those names all mixed up, so you better check that in your moth book, okay? Anyway, whatever comes out of it is a great big moth, one of the big silk moths. It's about this long, this wide.
I'll check my encyclopedia
Right.
when I get home.
It probably has it. So, but that's really, a whole thing is made of silk, and you can even see here on the branch where the caterpillar tied the cocoon to the branch, so that no matter how strong the winds blow or how much ice and snow there is, he's safe, unless the branch breaks off the tree.
Yeah.
Well, I have a couple of other things that aren't really cocoons, but are interesting because they're ways that
They're
insects
dark
spend
blue.
the winter.
They're dark blue.
They're what?
Blue.
Dark blue, grayish blue, right. See, am I poking you in the face, Brian? Let's see if we can get it away so it's going to stand still without anybody touching it, okay? And then you be careful not to touch it. And have you ever seen anything like this when you were out for a walk?
No.
Don't you think you would think it was something peculiar if you saw a tree, this alder bush,
I've seen a
I
tree
think
like
I've
this.
seen that before.
with white stuff on it? It looks like someone lost some cotton or some wool.
Yeah.
Well, these are some funny little aphids. Aphids are a little tiny insect of which we have thousands of kinds, and some of them are pests and some of them really don't do any harm. They're very good bird food. But this one kind always spends its winter on an alder bush. In the summer, it's on a different kind of tree. And they're grayish blue, but they also have something curious. They make little thin strings of wax somehow that covers them up and helps to keep them warm in the winter.
Looks like if you took iron powder and then you took a magnet and put it under it. Looks like that.
Right.
Oops.
And they get together in little groups on the branch and just snuggle together for the winter, and they're called woolly aphids. I think that's a good name because they look like they're covered with bunches of wool. Maybe I can fish off a couple for you to get a close look at. If you touch them, they just sort of all go to pieces. There's one for you to see if it'll... They really are insects. You'll have to take my word for it because you really can't see much. You can't tell whether they have 6 legs
What do they turn
or
into?
2. Well, they don't turn into anything. Aphids always look just like aphids. They don't turn into anything.
Mine's moving.
Is it? Well, sometimes if you look very closely on the branch, you can see some little baby aphids moving and going to a different place.
Looks like a fly with a whole bunch of cotton on the back.
Because when you bring them into a warm place like HodgePodge Lodge, when they've been out in the cold, then they sort of wake up and think spring is here.
Yeah, which it's
That
really
one's-
not.
Well, I don't see any of them making a trip right now.
My leg's moving.
Yours, is it his legs or is it some of that wax that's hanging on the back?
His legs.
Some of that
You
wax
have
or
very
something
good
comes
eyes, Jeannine.
No,
I
I
saw
glasses.
birds,
I don't
too.
think I have much good eyes.
I think I've seen bugs like this, except bigger.
What other kind of creature do you know that makes silk besides caterpillars?
The spider. Well, they make
Right,
silk webs.
right. And sometimes spiders make themselves a special little silk nest to spend the winter in, so you could almost call it a cocoon. And this is just sort of a pile of spider nests that I
There's a spider.
found in my expedition to look behind shutters. There, I'll turn him upside down. That'll give you something to think about. Maybe he'll be still for a few minutes. But you can
A few minutes.
you could tell a spider nest from a place that a moth was spending the
There's
winter.
another one.
Yeah,
This
there's
one
another
coming
one.
out.
See, had the
is
whole.
all red.
Well, are you scared of spiders, Jeannine?
Well, when I was little, I used to call them Cindy's.
Cindy's.
Well, this
yeah,
one's
yeah.
black. He almost looks like a cinder.
And every time one of my friends would kill him, I would go, "Don't kill the Cindy's."
Well, they are. A lot of people are scared of them. Hey, the one we turned over on his back is still there. He's being
I thought,
a very
I thought
good
that,
prospect.
That one right there was going around there.
But if you have any shutters, that's a good place to look behind to find out how some creatures are spending the winter.
Where the
They
baby
really,
one was.
Sticky.
spiders have gone to a lot of work to make all these little nests. And sometimes in a spider web you'll find a spider just spending the winter, and sometimes you'll find some eggs, and sometimes you'll find some
Here, now
baby
he's
spiders. Oh, now he decided to wake up. Come back here,
My
spider.
teacher in 3rd grade read us a story called Charlotte's Web.
Isn't that
yeah,
a good
I like
spider
that
story?
one. I have that book of my own. It's a paperback.
Well, we found out one thing about spiders. If you want them to stand still, turn them over on their back for a minute. There, maybe you'll stay on the...
One leg.
Well, do you think you understand a little more about cocoons? We covered a lot of subjects that weren't cocoons.
I
but
just
it'll be-
learned something from him. If it has silk on it, it is a cocoon.
Usually, if it has silk on it, it was made by a caterpillar, then you could be safe in calling it a cocoon.
Looks like a little insect.
Right. Well, I hope you've learned something about cocoons and that you'll come back very soon to visit us at HodgePodge Lodge again. Goodbye.
This program was made possible through funds contributed by members of the Maryland Center for Public Broadcasting.
Pre-recorded in the studios of the Maryland Center for Public Broadcasting.